I just came from a conference recently in Texas that was amazing. And a lot of it was around like the human skills is what we started recalling it, not just soft skills. Soft skills imply that it's like less than, right? But it's these human skills of like translating and working and sifting through everything. Like that's still at this point, like very much a human thing. We're very, humans are very chaos oriented.
Hello and welcome to the PyBites podcast, where we talk about Python, career, and mindset. We're your hosts. I'm Julian Sequeira.
And I am Bob Beldebos. If you're looking to improve your Python, your career, and learn the mindset for success, this is the podcast for you. Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the PyBites podcast. I'm Bob Beldebos, and I'm here with a very special guest, Tim Frazer. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bob. It's been a minute.
Yeah, we go back quite a few years. So Tim here is a software engineer, architect, entrepreneur, and has done many things. We got to know each other in PDM because you were in PDM, I think, in 2021.
Yeah, it was way back. I really liked it then.
Yeah, it's and yeah, we worked together, and you grew your software skills and mindset and all that. So today I want to talk a bit about your tech career background, how far have you come, what you're doing, coaching, industry trends, entrepreneurship. We'll see how much we go through, but yeah, maybe for the audience, you want to start with a quick intro?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, thanks, Bob. Very, very warm welcome. I think for me, it's just to give everybody context, like, why me, and like my journey through like becoming a software engineer, data engineer, architect, and starting my own business. I think that I fell into software engineering during the days of like my dad bought a 386. Yes, I'm that old, and me stealing it away from him. Realizing that I could eventually, as I progressed around stealing time on the computer, that I could cheat in video games if I just learned a little bit of coding, was probably like the soft intro for me into coding. But my background is actually like I'm a homeschooled hippie kid off the coast of Canada is where I grew up. So less than 3,000 people. There weren't many tech nerds in my circle. My parents, very strong vegetarians when I was growing up, and that was a good portion of my life. But I always loved technology. I was kind of like that weird kid that just loved tinkering, and computers was just absolutely the most amazing thing. So yeah, I grew up off the coast of Canada, West Coast, and then how did I even get here? I'm just trying to think. God, I feel so old sometimes, but
because now you're in New York right now, right?
No, I'm actually in Philadelphia, but decided to do even crazier. I bought a old house. Now for Europeans listening to this, that's like, it's over 100 years old. And New York was not, I don't make that kind of money. I'm a successful entrepreneur, not that successful. So yeah, I moved from Canada to New York City as a software engineer. So how I got into it was like, I kind of fell into it. I was doing operations at a company in Canada, and operations just means like doing everything, millions of Excel spreadsheets and then buying stuff. And I got my first dose of working for a startup that way because a friend at a yoga class introduced me to the company, and they needed somebody to fill out Excel sheets and talk to factories and do all kinds of stuff. So, but I got bored of doing it, by hand. So I quickly started coding Python because there's this fancy thing, and Excel sheets, and then I learned how to use and work on like ERP systems like NetSuite. So then I learned how to code on those things. Same thing. I just felt doing the same thing over and over again was like not conducive to my brain. And so I just learned how to do those kinds of things. And it turns out people like paying you to do those things. I wasn't very good at it, but I was good enough that people would constantly, hire me. And then, I work my way up through the company and learn how to solve bigger and bigger problems. And that's actually how I ended up in New York City, because I was working for a startup at that time, and they went more or less bankrupt as most startups end up doing. And it was an e-commerce startup up in Canada. and I won't say their name, but it was an exciting time. It was a very intense time of my life. But they gave me enough skills that I could get an interview with this really cool company, this startup that I will mention called Bonobos. They gave me a great chance, but I had to go learn Ruby on Rails, and I knew nothing about Ruby on Rails. And it's not Python, but I learned enough really fast. The manager gave me a chance and brought me to New York City, and I was in West Coast of Canada. Like somebody actually paid me to move to New York. I was super pumped and excited, and I brought my accounting and analysis background to help them with their logistics. So that's kind of how I combine my business and software engineering together. And while I was there, I was working in Ruby on Rails and in Ruby. There's this weird team, the data team, and they were just solving some really complex problems, and they were coding in Python. And this whole time I'm like self-taught. I never did a coding camp or anything like that. I was just like, I guess YouTube was around at the time, and books. I know books, lots of books. I ended up working for the data team a lot. And so started learning Python and doing that. And that's actually how I ended up getting into PDM, because I didn't have time to do a coding camp full time. I wanted something practical. And I think you and Julian, Bob, you guys were on a podcast. It was like 100 Days of Code. I think a lot of people found you that way.
Yeah. That was
And
big.
you guys I'm not sure when you guys launched PDM, but I think it was like relatively new from like the PyBites time. And I was like, wow, this is super smart. Like, this is what I need. I need like this feedback loop, because like I love and believe in coaching very much, like more than traditional teaching sometimes. Like the most important piece is the feedback loop if you're doing something. And yeah, that's how I met you.
Awesome. So yeah, there's a couple of things there. Let's go back to the start. You said homeschooling. I don't get to talk to homeschooled people often. So how has that influenced how you learn things and develop?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I'm fine with chaos. Like my parents were like, so my mom was an artist, and studied fashion design, and you know, and then my dad has a diplomas in chemistry and physics. Um, so very different ways of seeing the world. I
Good
would say.
combination. Yeah.
Very different. So, like my mom taught me how to like sew teddy bears or quilt. And my dad would be like, okay, as a 14-year-old, you need to do your taxes. And I was like, great. So I'm just going to use software. And he was like, nope, and gave me a pencil. He was like, you made enough money mowing grass and like babysitting at 14. And I had just done a small job at a grocery store. He's like, we're going to teach you how to do this. And we're going to do this by hand. So, very opposite views of how to do everything. So what I got from that is like, because I also could like follow my interests, and it wasn't contained to say like, 90-minute class or whatever it was. My mom very much believed in most people who will find things that they're interested in, and double down on learning on those things. So, that was kind of like they gave me this crazy passion for learning. Like I read so many books. I write my own Substack. I write and talk to people from all over the world. Talk about mentorship that I do and other things like that. So what it's given me is a just like foundation to essentially have like no fear about learning. Like you can mostly learn anything, especially now. Oh my God. Then it was like books. And also like don't ask for permission. Like my mom enrolled me in like university coding classes when I was like 13 because she didn't believe in age restricting anything. So she just like secretly enroll me using her age or whatever, and just like hook me up.
That's awesome. Yeah. So in a sense, you almost got to focus on the things that were most useful and you liked the most from the start, almost like taking a shortcut because you didn't have to learn all the boring stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like my dad believed in the boring stuff. Like he was like, you're gonna learn how to like literally chop wood. Like I grew up on an island where chopping wood was a thing. He was like, you're gonna learn how to do practical stuff, like getting under a car and like how does it work? And my mom was like, okay, well, you also need to learn how to draw and paint, kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a very at the time it didn't my head was not unique because like I had a bunch of homeschooling friends at the time.
Yes.
Okay. It's just normal. And then I met,
So
yeah.
there you go. Yeah.
Well, my wife is the opposite. Like she did private school and PhD and very deep thinker in so many in like certain aspects, like absolutely amazing thinking patterns. But yeah, we're like very very opposite on some things. I definitely have the opinion of like, oh, I can solve this, and then just like go off on long tangents of thinking on things.
Yeah. Interesting. So going back to the coach, so you got pretty far by yourself coding, and there you hit a wall, right? Like you definitely
Oh
were able
yeah,
to produce scripts and code, but you missed that feedback loop.
yeah.
Now, before joining the our coaching, you and coaching go back a long time, right? Because you have been doing powerlifting as well. Is that where you met coaching, or was it even before that? Maybe you can talk a bit about that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, for me, for coaching, like it started way back. I mean, I learned it from my mom, obviously, feedback loops,
Uh-huh.
but also like, I mentorship. Like, I would get mentored in lots of different subjects when I was younger, and the expectation when I was growing up was like, well, if you learned it, you also have to learn how to teach it. So, I mean, more formally is probably when I was like doing yoga. So I had arthritis when I was really young, and both my knees really bad. And so I learned yoga, uh, from a teacher on this hippie island. And that was like a really important thing because it taught me the relationship between like, mentorship and like teaching in a more practical way, I would say. It helped me get mobility back. And I really like that. So I very quickly learned how to, try to teach that way, right? Like, how do you take what could be a very dense subject, like why you breathe and the health and focus and everything around it, and condense
Mhm.
into a pattern of movements, and then slowly explain over time why it's important. Um, and then, through crazy things throughout my life, I ended up coaching CrossFit and getting certified. That led to me going and doing powerlifting. I also got certified. I don't know why I like them. I don't have an education, formal university degree, but I get certified for these coaching things. And then I also fell into Olympic lifting, and I competed in Canada for a while in my 20s, clearly related to yoga, but I just follow what I'm interested in. And I did that for years. I ended up being a judge. So I would go to competitions in Olympic lifting and judge people, whether they did it right or did it wrong. And then, medaled in that. And then I taught that too for a little while. Not full time. I never did any of those teaching full time because I also had a career running at the same time that actually paid the bills for me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow, cool. I didn't know about the competing, or you might have told me that, but that I want to hone in a bit on that. Like, there's a lot of mindset, right, with the competitive sport. So,
Yeah.
what is? Can you give us one mindset lesson from that? Because it's probably going to equally apply to people wanting to become successful in any career.
I think that the reason why I compete now, I mean, there's no real competing in yoga, but in like a lot of other states, like powerlifting, it's a clear mark. Um, it drives you to focus, right? You have a time frame when a thing needs to be done, whether you're ready or not, right?
Mm.
Like projects and companies. And I think that we all get a little bit obsessed with perfecting something and trying to adjust the timelines. So if you sign up for a competition with your money and you tell a few friends, boy, the pressure comes down. Like, oh, now you gotta show up. Now, doesn't mean I haven't failed, like got injured or or got sick or something like that, but or I wasn't as prepared as I liked. But I think that's a little bit like real life.
Yeah.
Like roadblocks happen and sometimes you don't. So, there are many times where I'd miss the podium or I would I would get more fun and enjoyment actually of coaching other people on my team and working with them and finding that was the rewarding piece. Yeah, sometimes I like winning gold or sometimes silver, but
Yeah. Yeah. More the journey than the actual result
yeah,
or
I
reward.
mean,
Yeah.
exactly. At the time, you may not appreciate the journey. I'll tell you that. Like, God, like weightlifting, just like coding, honestly, sometimes it's just like you just got to get the reps in. I know
The
we like
reps, reps,
here and
reps,
there.
reps. Yeah.
No one likes hearing it, but you know how to get good at coding? You code. You can read
Yeah.
as many books as you like, but that's why, you and Julian have that nailed down. It's just like even with AI, and we'll talk about that later, I think, but you still got to get the reps in.
Yeah, we can talk AI. Yeah, so maybe we can make the translation to PDM. Like when you joined PDM and you needed that coaching and guidance, was that kind
Yeah.
of similar? What happened there? That you became focused, you had a goal, and you had that
Yeah.
critical feedback. What was the what transformation happened?
Yeah, I mean, working with like Julian, like I felt like, man, with my background, I felt like such a, fish out of water. Like I almost felt like I had faked my way into multiple careers to be a software engineer, which is ironic because like I had actually interviewed on technical components multiple times at that point, but I
Right,
still felt like I never, and I don't think most of us ever escape that where like somebody's gonna find you out or something.
imposter syndrome. Right.
Yeah, it's whoa, what? No way. And a lot of people, most people suffer from this. Some people don't, but I am constant. And I think
Those
with
are the real imposters.
yeah, I know, right? I'm the real imposter. Everybody else is
Yeah.
faking their imposter syndrome. I think for me, it was just like why I came to PDM is because I knew I needed, proper feedback and like handholding. And like I worked with you and there's another guy I worked with, Eric. He gave me some really good feedback, but it was like really just practical ways of thinking about software that you're working at these software companies and if you're really lucky, and I was, that they would like sit you down and talk about like how to build real software, but generally most of the time they're managers, they don't have time to talk about it, they kind of expect you to just like figure it out.
Mm.
And I felt like as much as I like the time pressure and the crunch to prove myself, like that maybe a more structured way of learning, um, that had a tighter feedback loop that I would ever get in most coding camps, and I've actually coached at coding camps, but in my career, would be something much more in my interest. And that's what kind of PDM did for me.
Cool. Yeah, and I think it's also the one-on-one component because you mentioned boot
Oh,
camps, and so
absolutely.
that's too cohort driven, and then I think the efficiency drops. You
Yeah, it's
have
really
to.
hard. It's really hard to do the cohort model. Like it's useful, it can be useful, but like the one-to-one component of teaching, like even when I was coaching in Olympic lifting, like I would take large chunks of my time to sit down with people and figure out their goals, like what do they wanted to compete in, and I would drive them to like finishing a thing, even if they weren't comfortable or if they felt ready. And I felt very much the same thing when I was in PDM. It's like, okay, well, you finish your thing and um, it doesn't have to be external. Like maybe the thing I was working on was actually more of an internal tool at my company, but like it gave me the domain expertise that I felt comfortable with.
Mm. Awesome. And since you have always been coaching, but you're also coaching now in software, right? So tell a bit
Yeah.
about your coaching work on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for coaching wise, like, so one of my goals was to kind of lift people up in more marginalized spaces or people that don't have access to, say, a person that's worked at such large companies. Like I worked at, God, Bonobos and Walmart and multiple startups at this point, and having that expertise. So, like, I've been doing a lot of mentorship and coaching for people abroad. So, like, less people in India and in Africa, some people in Brazil and they're just kind of like helping people in their journey. And I started this a couple years ago um, when I felt also isolated during COVID. Like I just wanted to connect to more people because I've been circling around with like lots of senior engineers at this time, and we all speak the same language at this point.
Right.
But I felt like I don't know, pay it forward really. Maybe I could help someone else out there. So I think about this point, I've coached. It must be almost 100 people now. Uh,
Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
at one point my calendar was getting a little too packed and I have two young kids, under four
Yeah.
now. And
That
so packing it in
changed a lot.
it started to be quite the level of gymnastics. So I'm not doing as much right now. I'm working on a new program. I'll talk about in a second, but that's been it was quite good. It was good. I learned, and also like learning and getting feedback about me as a coach and mentor, like what worked and what didn't work was like super important. So I've had
Mm.
to rethink on how I coach, which is
What did you learn there? What changed?
um I mean you probably already knows this, but like I'm used to when I was coaching mostly it's physical stuff. It's a lot. I would say it's pretty, you made it or you didn't make it, but like
Mm,
you're talking software engineering and other forms of output like that. I would argue it's a little bit on the creative side. Like it's a little harder sometimes in changing people's habits. Um, yeah, I also worked at a behavior change startup for a couple of years, and that gave me like more insight that most of software engineering is it's habit and introspection and asking the questions like, are you solving the right things? Constantly at the top of mind. So for what I've learned personally was that people generally like to be told what to do, um, which as a mentor is not really what you're supposed to be doing.
mm,
So that can be very uncomfortable for people because they typically come to you and they're like, well, what should I do next? And I don't say
mm.
you shouldn't give somebody concrete advice. That's fair. But I think at the same time, getting to their why they're doing what they're doing is sometimes much more important. And then
Mm.
giving them maybe something more specific to follow up with. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's interesting.
usually,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I struggled as well at the start doing the coding for them, right? Too much, and I
Yes.
totally got away from that because that's not how they're going to learn, right? So, it's a you really need to empower them or have them learn how to solve problems, right? And
Mhm.
be able to figure stuff out and also think how what's next. And as you say, right, you cannot always say like, well, no, go implement this and that and that and then make very specific tasks. It's especially if they go more for a senior software engineer, they need to be able to think about the next steps as well. So it's sometimes a fine line, right, between telling them what to do versus making them that they are able to do that themselves, right? So that can be tough, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, progressing in my career when I left, Bonobos and Walmart, I joined a startup, behavior change startup, and they gave me the opportunity to be a lead software engineer, data engineer actually. And that gave me the opportunity, like I'm greenfielding, I'm building stuff from scratch, right? And I'm working with people, but I was in the lead position. So it was like my responsibility to articulate and build the thing. Um, and then I quickly realized over time, like I actually need to build a team. So I went to the CTO at the time, and one of the best, craziest bosses I've ever worked for, just gave me shed loads of responsibility. He was like, "All right, cool, that sounds great. Now give me an articulated view. All right, let's go hire some people. Do you want to become a manager? Which I've been wanting to for a while because I was really interested in the people part. So, during my was it 2.5 years in that company, I got promoted several times into director, and I had upwards of like 12 people reporting to me at one point, which is a very different way of thinking all of a sudden. You're a manager, but you also have to be a coach a little bit because you're software engineering and like how much, all those things we talk about in leadership is like really is important. And also, understanding like the deliverables of your team members that you're working with, but also like I had senior staff members and like and I promoted several of them, and I was like, okay, well, no, it's on to you to figure it out. Like, I can't tell you absolutely everything you need to solve. You actually need to go to business and talk to them what problems we're going to solve.
Right.
Yeah, and giving them enough, and also not coding for them, which is very hard to do because that was my
As an
background.
engineer. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And then also having the humility to learn that you're not going to be able to code as much as they are. So they probably are the actual subject matter experts at that point.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of mindset and soft skills. So you're always focused on the tech skills, right? But this is so much more, right?
Yeah, I just came from a conference, a data conference recently in Texas that was amazing. And a lot of it was around like the human skills is what we started recalling and not just soft skills. Soft skills imply that it's like less than, but I would call them human
Yeah,
skills.
it's not really good
It's just what it
term.
is we've
Yeah,
all
yeah,
been told like that, right? But it's these human skills of like translating and working and sifting through everything. Like that's still at this point, like very much a human thing. We're very, humans are very chaos oriented.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Is AI changing that or going to change that? How do you see
Parts of
that?
it. Ooh, that's a philosophical piece.
Yeah.
AI doesn't think the way we think, right? It's like does it's mindless and it's just like 24/7, 7 days a week, and spawn off millions of different things. But um, yeah, I mean, I use it in all kinds of work. I use it for some of my contracts, depending on the security level that they have and access to data, and then my own personal projects. God, I probably run anywhere from 6 to 8 different kinds of AIs just to help me get more stuff done. And frankly, not all of it's particularly good at this point, but it's useful. It's just a
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Is it more like an add-on still? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you've ever had like Claude or anything else like that, translate your meeting notes, you'll know it still misses quite a lot of context and a lot of things. I'm seeing some amazing and interesting things in the space. And I'll be honest, like 2 years ago, I was actually working on LLMs and behavior change and how those work, and machine learning, more deterministic outputs.
Mm.
So yeah, I've been working on the stuff for a while. So yeah, it's fascinating. I don't think I'm gonna have to bring a nugget that's new in our workspace here. I think you guys talk a lot about it.
Yeah. But are there any other trends in the industry you're keen on and we should follow, or you think we should pay attention to, but that's going to be really crucial? I mean, it could be AI, but can also be other things.
I think just that I mean, it is useful. Everybody should be learning it. I mean, everybody's been quoting this so far, but if you're going to be the engineer, the only engineer is going to be replaced with the engineers that don't know how to use AI with the code. It's just like
Right.
like not knowing how to use a debugger, right? Come on, like let's get
Mm.
going. I think it's like great. It's like right at this time, it's just an amazing search engine I use. That's can be wrong. like Stack
Yeah.
Overflow might be wrong. It might be hot garbage. But I think like, it solves the 70% problem, which is getting started. Like,
Yeah.
boy, like, I would get to code all kinds of projects, but then like finishing it, oh man. Yeah, that's the hard part. I think a lot of people dodge that question. Like taking from beta software to production software is a far different realm. So I
That's
think
still a
that
long stretch. Yeah.
that's a very long stretch. I think you and I both use it probably every day, but like getting it to the point that you understand it, we're a distance away. I think a lot further away, kind of like the self-driving cars and Waymo, and take out the marketing and all that
Yeah.
jazz. But some of
Yeah.
it's
It
going
still
on.
requires so much expertise. Yeah. Or
Yeah, some parts of the industry. So I would say for like taking uh, the marketing gloss, like practical applications, there's just so much text and data. Obviously, I work in the data field these days, and there's just so much stuff that's like not modeled correctly or for software. And I think for me, it's like we're going to see like the Cambrian explosion of software like everywhere. Not all of it's going to be good, obviously, but it's kind of whenever I remember, I guess I'm old enough where like Ruby on Rails came out and everybody's like, well, now we can't employ enough Ruby people. Like we're going to unemploy thousands of Ruby developers because Rails just does so much. I think it proved out to be very, very different
yeah.
story. And I can't really predict what the outcomes are going to be. That's nonsense if anybody claims they can. But I think that uh, the trends are fascinating to see where this could be useful. I'm a glass half full kind of person. So I
Hmm.
think that um, there's so many things, even in my personal life, I think that are going to be I could just write custom software. Right? Most software we use today, SaaS software, it does like 60 or 70% what you use. And then you get a ton of other junk you never wanted, like tons of
Hmm.
stuff. But like niche software to manage like small businesses or families, schedule, like there's just so many things and things that you can do now that you just like honestly, you just couldn't build with software. It was just took too long and too many resources to get to even like a beta. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Fortunate times. Interesting times.
It is interesting times, right? I think the one trend I don't like actually that I'm seeing right now is not understanding what people are making. Like people will just go bash their. I mean, I guess sure, it's really awesome to go to ChatGPT and just get it to iterate a million times on your Python code. Um, but you do need to spend a little bit of time as to understand why it's working. Otherwise, like when you need to make, precise changes or you may not know what you're trying to change or what you're
Mm.
breaking. I've seen that quite a few times recently with junior and even intermediate engineers that are creating software these days. They don't understand what they've made, and so when you ask them like a pointed question about a certain thing, like just complete no understanding.
Yeah, yeah. I was taking the shortcut and not taking that deeper understanding.
Yeah, like I'm seeing some engineers, they'll start the framework and then they'll go back to their code and just rewrite it. Now that they understand, right? Now they're
Mm.
like, oh, now I know what I want to do, which I think
Mm.
there's tons of value there, tons of value. But making production ready applications, like think in finance, like in medical and all these other things, I think you go really fast using these tools, but like you better be damn sure you're doing it right because I don't
Mm.
think anybody's going to want to know their banking budgeting app is reporting incorrect numbers when you're about to make life choices.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're coming on time, and I wanted to ask you about content creation, community growing, entrepreneurship. So maybe we need
Yeah.
to have a part two. But we always close off with the books, and I know you're a voracious reader, so maybe cannot ask you for a whole list. But may I just
Man.
practically ask you what you're reading now, or maybe have read recently, like one or two book tips?
Yeah. Yeah, let me think right now. I'm trying to think. So like content creation, yeah, I've just started getting into the content creation place. Like I think most of us, or at least I work mostly remotely and have worked mostly remotely. Sometimes I go on site for clients like I do right now. But like you sort of become in your bubble. I live in Philadelphia now. I was living in New York, so like the community is different, right? But I still want to be connected to all these like minds. Like you're in Spain and Julian's off in Australia. What's he doing over there? And I have like friends now all over the place, right? Time zone be damned. Um,
Mm.
and then also I don't know what I don't know, and so I started writing on my own blog a little bit, Substack like we all do these days, but things that interest me. Um, and then I started writing a little bit on LinkedIn, which I find a little bit less toxic than
Yeah.
Twitter. Sorry, X, and a little bit on Blue Sky, and I found through that. I found like so much community and other people that are interested in solving similar problems as me. So I found it just really interesting. And I don't really believe I use like AI to help me like my grammar maybe a little bit, might like help me my thinking, but I believe that the actual output should be me writing. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why I'm a little slower these days than all the robots out there. Um, and then in entrepreneurship, like so I run my own consulting company and I have quite a few clients now, maybe more clients than I have time, which has been really rewarding and absolutely amazing. And maybe we'll bring my wife in here, Christina, who also went on the PDM and is also working at some big names, and she helps me a little bit to keep me focused to get all the work that needs to get done. We're working on building applications in obviously in Python for us, and using AI and in large language models and things. But we're very conscious about the problems that we're wanting to solve. That should be a couple months. We'll have some stuff to show off to
Yeah.
Bob and
Well,
Julian.
we definitely want you both on, and we can maybe talk about that in a dedicated one.
Yeah, very different journeys. Very, very
Uh,
different journeys. And then I think books. Oh man. Oh, I have so many books. I just read so much right now. I mean, I'll be honest, like I read a lot, but I also fall asleep with the book on my face or my Kindle half the time.
yeah.
Um, yeah, see two young kids, 10:30 at night, just book
So
on
yeah, I
my.
read for inspiration, not for remembering too much.
Yeah, well, I'm a copious note taker. I take tons of notes and stuff. I did Tiago Forte's Second Brain, so always taking notes and stuff. So one of my thing is some of my favorite authors that write recently was would be like Scott Young. So I'm reading Get Better at Anything.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
The
that's a
guy from
fantastic.
Ultra Learning as well, right? I think.
Yeah, it's ultra learning. It's the same kind of vein. Even though I like obviously I read and learn a lot and I'm self-taught, I always think that you can always like figure out how other people are thinking, figure out the most recent research about learning and getting better at that. Another book that I'm reading that I actually think is really good. It's called Money for Couples from Ramit Sethi. I think a lot of people underestimate what money means to them
Yeah.
and how to work with your partner and your family and talking about it. I think that is super important. We spend a lot of time in our life earning it, spending it, but we don't really talk about it. And I think that's
Yeah,
all a
really
very
exciting. Yeah, he has a Netflix series about that as
sure
well.
did, sure
Yeah.
did. I was supposed to be on his podcast with my wife, but I think
Oh wow.
we chickened out when I realized I think it was supposed to might have potentially led to being on Netflix, and I was like, oh no, I'm comfortable sharing a lot of things, but
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Now those books will work. We can always link more, or you can put a little reading list together. But yeah, those are awesome. Yeah, I want to thank you for hopping on and sharing. I think we definitely need to do another one. But any final closing words?
Um, yeah, no, I mean, thank you to Julian and Bob for giving me the opportunity and the platform to kind of get the career I wanted to. I honestly didn't think that I would be a successful engineer, but with the help of your community and gas, it really truly helped me be more certain about what I wanted to work in and do.
Awesome. Well, makes my day. Happy to hear. And yeah, again, thanks for hopping on, and we'll keep in touch, and
Absolutely.
we'll link your Substack and socials so people can reach out. And of course, you
Absolutely. And
find the
also,
community as well. So
yeah, anybody's listening, if you're in Philadelphia, I'm part of the Data Philly group. That's where I'm going to be doing my stuff, more in person, less digital. I find it more rewarding recently. And so, yeah, just reach out to me on the socials. I do mentor at least one person every single week. I usually randomly choose from a list.
that's awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to
All right.
Tim. Tim, thanks.
Thanks, Bob.
And talk soon.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the Pi Bytes podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. A quick message from me and Bob before you go. To get the most out of your experience with Pi Bytes, including learning more Python, engaging with other developers, learning about our guests, discussing these podcast episodes, and much more, please join our community at pibytes.circle.so. The link is on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube, and it's in the show notes for everyone else. When you join, make sure you introduce yourself, engage with myself and Bob, and the many other developers in the community. It's one of the greatest things you can do to expand your knowledge and reach and network as a Python developer. We'll see you in the next episode, and we will see you in the community.